You are now listening to the Masters Mahan podcast. Episode 19, The Catcher in the Lie. This episode may be deemed inappropriate for some listeners. If you have been abused or are a minor, you should stop now. This episode builds on the previous ones. In our previous episode, we set up the notion of spell casting in broad, long strokes to help stimulate you into the concept.
Stop that.
I don't mean in a sexual way and all. It was done to get you to come and see how it is used both in ritual abuse and on the public at large. You are encouraged to listen to episode 18 prior to this one. In fact, you are strongly encouraged to enter the subject from the front, since going through the back door will only leave you prostrated, and there is so much you will then need to brush up against to reach this episode, which is the climax of the prior ones. So please take number 1 in hand and start with episode 1, as each succeeding experience with us assumes that you have risen up the ranks of the previous, but even if you have deviated from the normal, push on, continue, push on. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You'll be pleased you did, because...
It's one small step for man, one
We are, as a people,
giant leap that we
opposed to
should
secret
have
societies, to secret oaths, and to secret procedures. And we are opposed
Any
around the
attempt to
world
achieve
by a
world order
monolithic
before that
and ruthless
time
conspiracy
must be the work
that
of the
relies
devil.
primarily on covert means.
Well, join me. I'm glad to sit here at the right hand of Satan.
The vision of Joel has been fulfilled.
So the name of this project is FunVax.
We don't just need more money for vaccines for children eventually. We need more money to plan for the second pandemic. There's going to be another pandemic.
We'll eliminate this behavior. And we
I
believe
am
that's
Governor
the
Spencer
satisfactory way
Cox,
to get
and my
the
preferred pronouns are he, him, his.
Do you think the first gay president or the first
Well,
woman
we already
president?
have it with Obama, so let's just calm down. Michelle is a transgender. We all know.
And so we eat the blood of our enemy.
But you know, there's quite an awakening coming.
Hear it. All occult spells are based on word plays, repetition and/or circular reasoning, and reinforcement through partial real-world truth. We continue with your major programming tool that has been used on your teenagers backwards of 80 years now. Let's explore J.D. Salinger's one-hit bestseller, The Catcher in the Rye, by stepping into the darkness of the rye field. Or as some Luciferians quip, smoke gets in your eyes.
I'll go in and flush a bird out. Just stay even with me as I go in. You stupid fool. Do you see one?
Right there under that dead tree.
Oh yeah. You're falling behind. You can't shoot safely if you're behind me.
Oh no. Why did you get in my way?
Smoke gets in your eyes. Smoke gets in your eyes. Smoke gets in your eyes.
Of the many programming books used on the masses, perhaps the most ubiquitous modern example is J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye. Hopefully, we have prepared you to finally see what your young groin was trying to tell you back in your impressionable high school days when you were required to read this book. Consider this episode as an intermediate course in seeing and hopefully undoing some past mind control. Let's start with some history. J.D. was born Jerome David Salinger on New Year's Day, 1919, to to Sol Salinger, a Jewish dealer in kosher foods, and a non-Jewish mother, Marie Gillich. Jerome David didn't know that his mother wasn't Jewish, because after her marriage she changed her name to the Hebrew form Miriam to shut up her in-laws, who were angry that their prince had married a golem, meaning a dirtbag daughter of Eve with Adam, in their culture. This is your clue that his grandparents considered themselves descendants of Eve's so-called premarital affair with Lucifer in snake form. We'll expand it when we can slip it in undetected later, so let it just grow in your mind for now.
Stop that.
Under Jewish law, as they understand it, one's Jewishness comes from one's mother, and so little JD had his first lesson in being a phony at his bar mitzvah, when the truth was sprung on him that he wasn't really considered a real Jew in his Jewish community, living as and being confronted with phonies would become a major theme in his book. During World War II, gifted American soldiers were assigned to work in counterintelligence, known then as the CIC. The two most famous of these were Heinz Henry Kissinger, the Illuminati programmer, and J.D. Salinger, the one-hit wonder author of The Catcher in the Rye. Salinger witnessed the horrors of D-Day on Utah Beach and was an interrogator during the Battle of the Bulge. During these operations, over 425,000 men were killed on both sides. Salinger was responsible for interviewing captured German soldiers and local civilians, both friendly and pro-Hitler. We can assume that he witnessed torture and possibly worse. He would never speak about it. War does things to the mind, and it is a fact that Salinger came to hate the U.S. Army as much as he hated the Nazis. We know that his young mind failed him under the unending pressure of trauma after trauma. When he found himself suicidal in Europe, he checked himself into a private hospital to keep his name out of the Army medical rolls. But, once recovered, he volunteered to return for more trauma with the CIC. While we don't know the full extent of his personal involvement in counterintelligence, we do know that generally, for his work in the CIC, Salinger was cited for valor on more than one occasion, and was called a bona fide hero in the Army. Once you understand that Salinger's war record was so highly personal, his need to lock himself away for long periods of time makes more sense. He lived with the deep shame and trauma of what he witnessed and participated in. This is why so many combat veterans end up on welfare or on the street. PTSD untreated can be debilitating. Salinger wrote during the war, even during combat, the stories that became The Catcher in the Rye. Working under, or certainly with, Heinz Henry Kissinger, he was trained in various means of neuro-linguistic programming, a fancy word for brainwashing and interrogation, in order to understand, manipulate, and hopefully de-Nazi former German soldiers. This is a scientific form of spell casting. We have already said that the Illuminati tasked their brethren in the Democrat National Socialist Party, or the Ashken Nazi Party, to find a way to do this to the masses with greatest effect.
Nazi Germany had a plan to sexualize America's children. And Nazi German scientists started working with Alfred Kinsey in the US, the Kinsey Institute.
The great sex researcher of the 1950s. Right?
Absolutely. And this is a man who performed sexual acts on 6-week-old babies, boys.
Having set the stage, let's break down scientific neuro-linguistic brainwashing into the 8 professional steps that clinical hypnotherapists use when treating people, since the majority of the public has not been satanically, ritualistically abused. although you might be horrified to hear that today it is believed that 1 in every 300 Americans has been, and that up to 40% of all boys and girls today worldwide have endured some form of sexual trauma and all. This reason is the greatest of their spells. Hold on to that thought for now. Get a grip, lay back, and relax. It's going to be swell.
Stop that.
Just don't get captured in the lie. Step 1. Focus human attention. While attempting to put a person or a nation into a trance-like, more suggestible state, it is necessary to capture your victim's attention. This is known as baiting and hooking in Hollywood. The most engaging movies bait you to get your attention, and then they hook you to keep it.
Stay on target. We're too close. Stay on target.
I am a good boy.
It is usually done by setting up a question that the mind needs answered. The human mind, like the human body, prefers homeostasis. But, just like witches,
Sure, I know. But aren't they all witches inside?
the mind is intrinsically curious. It's a form of circular reasoning, as the question needs to be answered for the mind to rest and move forward, which is exactly what the occult does not want you to do. Also, one caution, because it is a first on our show. Hold on swears, and we are going to quote him exactly as J.D. Salinger wrote him, swear words and all. Adults can't protect little ones if they can't look into the darkness and see what is really waiting there. All they will end up doing is handing their loved ones over to Walt on his terms.
Yes, I think I'd like that.
But we did want to warn you. Here is how J.D.'s bestseller opens.
If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably want to know is where was I born, and what my lousy childhood was like, and how my parents were occupied and all before they had me, and all that David Copperfield kind of crap. But I don't feel like going into it if you want to know the truth. In the first place, that stuff bores me, and in the second place, my parents would have about 2 hemorrhages apiece if I told anything pretty personal about them. They're quite touchy about anything like that, especially my father. They're nice and all, I'm not saying that, but they're also touchy as hell. Besides, I'm not going to tell you my whole goddamn autobiography or anything. I'll just tell you about this madman stuff that happened to me around last Christmas, just before I got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy.
Here the questions being raised are pummeled at you so rapidly that you don't have time to settle on one before you are hit with the next. For a reader reading that, and we know you are listening to it, didn't you find your subconscious mind questioning, who is this guy? What's his name? Where was he born? Why doesn't he want me to know this? What is his heritage? What's the setup? Why does all that bore him? Why are his parents so touchy? What are they trying to hide? What is he trying to hide? Where is he now? Why is he mad?
Oh, you can't help that. Most everyone's mad here.
But all we are given is that. I'll just tell you about this madman stuff that happened to me. If you really want to hear about it, is the same as...
I want you to stare into the spiral. You want to give me your mind. And when I count down from 5 to 0, you're going to do just that. You're going to give me your mind.
The insistence that all of this is madman stuff sets you up for consent. Hypnotic mind control, even in tortured children, only works when it is given by consent.
Do you have power?
I have power.
Does power consent? If your consent is impure, it will kill you.
We surrender. What more do you want?
To rule, there must be love. Your Your consent must be pure.
Step 2. Enhance awareness of the attention by immediate experience. In less pedestrian terms, this is the hook we are talking about. The bait gets the fish to bite without realizing that hidden in the bait is a hook. Once you are hooked, you are caught, and you are in for the ride.
Fishy, fishy, fishy!
The realization that you have been hooked is definitely an enhanced awareness, and it is by immediate experience. Perhaps you've seen hypno-entertainers speaking to a subject on the street or on the internet, and then suddenly grabbing their arms in a jerk or knocking their heads. This is the immediate experience. It has to be this immediate, as it must build on the attention, shock or hook it, and then overwhelm it. It's in this moment of chaos that the mind reaches out for rational meaning in an attempt to stay in equilibrium. Have you ever seen a person come out of a shock or a faint?
We're rolling.
Just knock me out, though.
Just go for it.
Are we really doing this?
Yes, do it. Slap his face.
Hey, wake up. Tim, wake up. Tim, wake up. Tim, wake up. Tim, wake up. Hey, wake up. Look at your knees. What? Get your knees on the floor. Tim, wake up.
Dude, I passed
Just
out.
stand up.
How long have you been out for? What the fuck? That was like weird.
There is a moment where the mind must make a quick assessment in order to survive. Should the body run, fight, swim, kick, punch? The mind doesn't know for a moment if it's underwater, in the mouth of a grizzly bear, been shot, or in a CPAP machine that has malfunctioned during the middle of the night. Is the body in danger, or is it not? The hypno-entertainer uses this moment of shock to offer a new normal that the brain can hold on to while it attempts to sort out the situation. So, having been baited or captured by JD, it's time to hook you, or reel you in.
Two fish?
What happens next in the book is so subtle that you hardly feel the hook in your jaw. The unnamed hypnotist, we won't learn the name of the narrator until further along, sets up the three themes: sex, murder, and secrecy. This is expertly done, while our hypnotist is standing above a schoolyard, commenting on girls, but in a homoerotic way, next to an enormous Rebel's rifle, which we are told is a cannon left over from the Revolutionary War. Juxtaposed against this building sexual anger, it becomes, subconsciously, an enormous phallus pointing right at the school. This will bookend by the end, so remember it. Once you see the hook, the next step is more obvious.
There were never many girls at all at the football games. Only seniors were allowed to bring girls with them. It was a terrible school no matter how you looked at it. I like to be somewhere at least where you can see a few girls around once in a while. Even if they're only scratching their arms or blowing their noses or even just giggling or something. Old Selma Thurmer, she was the headmaster's daughter, showed up at the games quite often, but she wasn't exactly the type that drove you mad with desire. I like her. She had a big nose and her nails were all bitten down and bleedy looking, and she had on those damn falsies that point all over the place, but you felt sort of sorry for her. What I liked about her, she didn't give you a lot of horse manure about what a great guy her father was. She probably knew what a phony slob he was.
Step 3. Leading the subject into accepting the experience. If the programmed reject the hook at this phase, the hypnosis is over and the programmer has failed, so it is important that the victim accepts the hook. This is done behind the rest of JD's Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. It is here that we finally learn our hypnotist's name. Holden. Hold on. Stay hooked. And we come to accept him as we hear him relate to a kindly old professor and his wife. They are portrayed in a Christmassy manner. He is as Santa Claus, and she is as Mrs. Claus. It is here that the transference, the acceptance, becomes complete and we swallow the hook. We become, hold on, Holden.
Anyway, it was December and all, and it was as cold as a witch's teat, especially on top of that stupid hill. I only had on my reversible and no gloves or anything. The week before that, somebody had stolen my camel's hair coat right out of my room, with my fur-lined gloves right in the pocket and all. Pensy was full of crooks. Quite a few guys came from these very wealthy families, but it was full of crooks anyway. The more expensive a school is, the more crooks it has. I'm not kidding. Anyway, I kept standing next to that crazy cannon, looking down at the game and freezing my ass off. All of a sudden, I thought of something that helped make me know I was getting the hell out. I suddenly remembered this time that I and Robert and Paul were chucking a football around. It was just before dinner and it was getting pretty dark out. But we kept chucking the ball around anyway. It kept getting darker and darker, and we could hardly see the ball anymore. But we didn't want to stop doing what we were doing. If I get a chance to remember that kind of stuff, I can get a goodbye when I need one. At least most of the time I can. As soon as I got it, I turned around and started running down the other side of the hill toward old Spencer's house. He didn't live on the campus. It was icy as hell and I damn near fell down. I don't even know what I was running for. I guess I just felt like it. After I got across the road, I felt like I was sort of disappearing. It was that kind of crazy afternoon, terrifically cold, and no sun out or anything, and you felt like you were disappearing every time you crossed a road. Boy, I rang that doorbell fast when I got to old Spencer's house. I was really frozen. My ears were hurting and I could hardly move my fingers at all. Come on, I said right out loud, almost. Somebody open the door. Finally, old Mrs. Spencer opened it.
Step 4. Introducing the goal. The next step is called introducing the goal because it is understood that people have to marinate in an idea before they can accept it. In our recent international disease scare, this was set up by the constant tick of the rising death clock. We have discussed ticking clocks many times together, and all of the previous discussions about them apply here.
I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late.
All of us were pushed to get the
Ouch!
I should be prosecuted.
Before supplies ran out, and we were the ones guilted to believe that we had killed our family and friends if we didn't conform. Do you see how this works?
This is urgent. It's going to have to go to 7 billion people.
Caught in the rye with the book, and having gained sympathy to the point that we have merged with the hypnotist.
I want you to stare into the spiral. You want to give me your mind.
We are ready to hear the goal in preparation to accept it. Here is the goal.
I'm the most terrific liar you ever saw in your life. It's awful. If I'm on my way to the store to buy a magazine even, and somebody asks me where I'm going, I'm liable to say I'm going to the opera.
Lies and deception is the goal. This makes sense and should stand as the warning to the reader. You are reading a book about a liar and a manipulator. This is in fact what the worst hypnotist is. A liar attempting to convince you of a mythology that is intended to become your new reality. Salinger said that this book was an adult book, but it was into our public schools and became a book for teenagers. When you read the book and experienced all of the subconscious angst, rage, and arousal, how many of you ran home and told your pastor or your parents about your new inner normal? Yeah, I thought so. You, merging with hold on, became a liar inside too. Now it's time to lock it, or reel you, in. Step 5. Reinforcing the goal through repetition. It is the reinforcement of the goal, becoming a liar, or a justifiable phony, so you can lie about your new inner dialogue of angst, rage, and sexual arousal. As you bring these forward toward the end goal of becoming a murderer and a pedophile, in the ancient pagan tradition, this is the new normal that is to come next. This is done hypnotically through repetition. Note these truncated examples with our patented snide but truthful commentary interruptions to illuminate the not always so obvious.
Where I lived at Pensy. I lived in the Ossenberger Memorial Wing of the new dorms. It was only for juniors and seniors. I was a junior. My roommate was a senior. It was named after this guy Ossenberger that went to Pensy.
Did you hear it? It's chiasmic. Pensy, Ossenberger, junior, senior, Ossenberger, Pensy. It's needless repetition, but it's also a circle and becomes a cage or a net as the logic turns in on itself. You think Pensy, Ossenberger, junior, senior, Ossenberger, Pensy, Ossenberger, junior, senior, Ossenberger, Pensy, Ossenberger, junior, senior, Ossenberger, Pensy, and so on. Hold on. Stay hooked.
Mr. Ossenberger made a pot of dough in the undertaking business after he got out of Pensy. What he did, he started these undertaking parlors all over the country that you could get members of your family buried for about $5 a piece. You should see old Ossenberger.
In other words, see him. Now.
He probably just shoves them in a sack and dumps them in a river.
Here is the reinforcement of the goal. Liar. Ossenberger. Pretends to be a great man who gives to the Shriner Hospital.
You say that you are Lucifer?
I am Lucifer.
Okay,
What
you're
about those
confirming it.
hospitals?
But he is really successful because he is a liar. Proof that we are on the right track is found in the name. Ossen in mammals means still forming. A mammal that is still forming is a child. Thus, his name is Childburger.
I'm going to show you how McDonald's builds a Big Mac sandwich.
We take the children of our enemy, which is the white race, and we bring them to the basements in the synagogues where we drain the blood and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering, and so we do that, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies. And the bodies, we're not cannibals, so what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular thing, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem.
There is death in them there burgers. See it again. The anger over the burger, the arousal, is connected to death. And worse. Anger, like arousal, must climax to release. While it is a tasteless dollar menu item here, it is useful to mention that Salinger's father made his money in the kosher meat and cheese business in New York. It was this business that his father originally wanted JD to enter into as his only son. Daddy Salinger was Jewish, even if not a practicing one, in New York City.
I mean, we steal 100 to 300,000 children a year just here in this country, and we drain the blood and we mix it with the Passover bread, and then we throw the bodies into the slaughterhouses that we own and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering.
At a future time, we will discuss the need for meat to carry a kosher approval seal after 1933.
Well, there was a goyim that wrote a book about it back in the 30s. I forget his name at the moment. Anyway, he wrote the book. People didn't buy the book. People don't want to listen.
Why is this necessary, with the USDA standards which are already the highest in the world? What might be in non-kosher meat that might be a concern?
And the bodies, we're not cannibals. So what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular thing, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating their children. McDonald's is one of our favorite outlets, and the people, they eat it for breakfast, they eat their children for lunch. You know, us Jews, you know, we gotta do what we do.
But in the mealtime, hear it again. J.D. struggled terribly with what he called phonies. Speaking through young Holden, he continually says that we need to, because our anger, like our arousal, needs a release if it is to live in truth, as wacky as that sounds to adults. While it is pushing a stereotype, it's true, which can be unfair. I always found it fascinating when debating morality with my many Jewish friends, that for many of them, the debate always ended when they said, "But he made a lot of money doing that." Shekels can be shekels, since our Lord warned us that money is the root of all evil.
Anyway, he gave Pensy a pile of dough, and they named our wing after him.
Yeah, we know, J.D., you've said this about 27 times. But it is the shock between the two, after being hit by the horrific lie that sweet old Ossenberger, who gives money to children, made his money by throwing the corpse of your beloved grandmother in a sack and dumping her corpse in the river. You are shocked. Back away from it, before you can process it with,
The first football game of the year, he came up to school in his big goddamn Cadillac, and we all had to stand up in the grandstand and give him a locomotive. That's a cheer. Then the next morning, in chapel, he made a speech that lasted about 10 hours. He started off with about 50 corny jokes just to show us what a regular guy he was.
reinforcement. He's a liar. Be a liar. Success comes from lying. That's what a phony does.
Very big deal. Then he started telling us how he was never ashamed.
Really? He's never ashamed? He's not ashamed of being a liar? A phony? Why? He's rich. Shekels, dollars, are more important.
When he was in some kind of trouble or something, to get right down on his knees and pray to God. He told us we should always pray to God, talk to him and all, wherever we were. He told us we ought to think of Jesus as our buddy and all. He said he talked to Jesus all the time, even when he was driving his car. That killed me.
Religion, God, Jesus, Christianity. Remember we told you, the occult says that when you need an escape, look to Jesus, but stay in the occult, where we worship Lucifer. If questioned, your inner liar is to say, "It's so funny that it slayed me." But that is the double meaning here. This is saying, die to the old and be born into the new. Hold on, son or daughter. Can't you see that rich people make their success off of lies and murder? The book will go on to add Christian monogamy to the list of what must be killed within you. This is replaced with sexuality, promiscuity, more specifically prostitution, homosexuality, and pedophilia, and is read by every high schooler in America just as they are emerging into adult sexuality.
Oh boy! I can just see this big phony bastard shifting into first gear and asking Jesus to send him a few more stiffs.
It's nearly 300 pages of the same, and all. But we aren't done pointing them out quite yet. Step 6. Encouraging disassociation and involuntary responses to the goal.
I am a good boy.
Once the victim has taken the bait, become hooked, taught the goals of their capture, and had them repeated and circularly reinforced, the plan is for the trigger that has been set to function as a command in a disassociated way and involuntarily. We have said numerous times that this is easier to do to children who have been ritually traumatized, but the effect can also work on the public if they are not mindful.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
It's time to get another booster. Act, don't think. Obey, don't question. Do as you are told to do.
Are you or a loved one suffering from a medical coincidence? At the Kaufman Institute for Coincidence, we promise to only look at your symptoms. We won't get all curious looking for causes, because that could get your employer or your doctor into some legal hot water. And nobody wants that. At Kaufman, we understand that coincidence is now the leading cause of death.
Hey, we've got another coincidence over here.
If we want to operate at the speed of science, there's no time for looking for causes. No pesky questions about drugs or vaccines you may have been given. At Kaufman, we specialize in the effects and leave the causes to the conspiracy theorists. And let's be honest, we know the cause anyway. It was a coincidence, right? For each new patient, Kaufman's talented team of doctors strap on their blinders and look directly at the problem area, usually the heart, just like the CDC recommends. Kaufman, because coincidences happen pretty much all the time.
Official medical coincidence partner of the NFL.
Our Hypnosis author continues as we are triggered to accept our new hat, the kappa of our new belief system, and our new view. The dialogue changes from being more probably, likely, should, could, and all, to command phrases. I, do, will, always, must, and so on.
It was pretty nice to get back to my room after I left old Spencer, because everybody was down at the game and the heat was on in our room for a change. It felt sort of cozy. I took off my coat and my tie and unbuttoned my shirt collar.
In other words, a subconscious striptease in a cozy nest-like room with no chance of being discovered. He, the hypnotist, is reading a book just like you are now. In other words, hold on. This is you, and you are, in reality, doing this. Sit back and see what happens.
I took off my clothes, and I put on this hat that I had bought in New York that morning. It was this red hunting hat with one of those very, very long peaks. I saw it in the window of this sports store. It only cost me $1. The way I wore it, I swung the old peak way around to the back. Very corny, I'll admit, but I liked it that way. I looked good in it. Then I got this book that I was reading and sat down in my chair. I'd read it already, but I wanted to read certain parts over again. I'd only read about 3 pages, though, when I heard somebody coming through the shower curtains. Even without looking up, I knew right away who it was. It was Robert Ackley, this guy that roomed right next to me. He's one of these very, very tall, round-shouldered guys. He was about 6'4".
All commands, no induction, no permissive words. Did you see that? You are to see a warm room, 2 boys, one dressed only in a towel, wet, shiny, steamy skin, round shoulders, tall, big, manly, and you, reading this book. You are smaller, submissive, in a chair in your nest, where subconsciously you too are naked, and are wearing only a hunting hat. But just before your mind hits that, oh, this is kind of off-putting, see how you are shocked again, now into hypnosis.
I took off my clothes, but I liked it that way. I looked good when I heard somebody coming through the shower curtains. This guy that roomed right next to me. He's one of these very, very tall, round-shouldered guys. He was about 6'4", with lousy teeth. The whole time he roomed next to me, I never even once saw him brush his teeth. They always looked mossy and awful. And he damn near made you sick if you saw him in the dining room with his mouth full of mashed potatoes and peas or something. Besides that, he had a lot of pimples. Not just on his forehead or his chin, like most guys, but all over his face. Not only that, he had a terrible personality. He was also sort of a nasty guy. I wasn't too crazy about him, to tell you the truth.
Do you see how it works? It's okay for you to embrace the moment of forbidden homoeroticism, because just at the point of consciousness, you are taken back to a place of relief. It's okay to notice his sexuality because you would never actually kiss this older boy, naked, round shoulders, buff, because his mouth is so gross and his face is gross, even though it was his body that was starting to work you over. But note the bookend lock-in for the trigger.
He's one of these very, very tall, round-shouldered guys. He was also sort of a nasty guy. I wasn't too crazy about him, to tell you the truth.
Hold on now. Holden doesn't tell the truth. He, like you, is a liar now. You did see his wet, sexy shoulders, and you are crazy a bit. At least you didn't have to accept that just yet. But watch what he does half-naked and sexy in a wet towel in your space, where you are warm and cozy, and reading this very book.
He came down off the shower ledge and came in the room. "Hi," he said. He always said it like he was terrifically bored or terrifically tired. He didn't want you to think he was visiting you or anything. He wanted you to think he'd come in by mistake, for God's sake.
Ah, so he's a liar too. Just remember that.
He started walking around the room, very slow and all, the way he always did, picking up your personal stuff.
What? My personal stuff? In my personal space? My personal junk? Off my desk? Whose desk? Your desk. Oh, my desk. This is me going through it. This is me being hypnotized. Do you see it?
He always picked up your personal stuff and looked at it. Boy, could he get on your nerves sometimes. I sneaked a look to see what he was fiddling around with on my chest of drawers. He was looking at this picture of this girl.
Oh, whew. Just in time, girls. He likes girls. So do you, remember?
This girl I used to go around with in New York. He must have picked up that goddamn picture and looked at it at least 5,000 times since I got it. He always put it back in the wrong place, too, when he was finished. He did it on purpose. You could tell.
He always put it back in the wrong place, too, when he was finished. He did that on purpose. You could tell. He always put it back in the wrong place. Where is the right place? Not in the back end, apparently. But anyway, he did it on purpose. Oh, come on, you say. No, wait. Hold on, dude. He did it on purpose. You can tell. Now that it's put in your back, hold on. You start to get mad.
All I see is red now. Truth will be over, it won't stop. All I see is red now.
All you see is red.
I don't know, and I don't give a damn. How about sitting down or something, Ackley kid? You're right in my goddamn light. He didn't like it when you called him Ackley kid. He was always telling me I was a goddamn kid because I was 16 and he was 18. It drove him mad when I called him Ackley kid.
Now note JD's power of word plays. At this he was masterful. Ackley, acne, Ackley, acne. He's naked, in your light, in your personal space. We are naked too. Subconsciously, he's a hunk. And then kid, acne. See how spells work?
He kept standing there. He was exactly the kind of guy who wouldn't get out of your light when you asked him to. He'd do it finally, but it took him a lot longer if you asked him to. "What the hell you reading?" he said. "Goddamn book." He shoved my book back with his hand so he could see the name of it. Any good? He said. This sentence I'm reading is terrific. I can be quite sarcastic when I'm in the mood. He didn't get it, though. He started walking around the room again, picking up all my personal stuff and Stradlaters. Finally, I put my book down on the floor. You couldn't read anything with a guy like Ackley around anyway. It was impossible.
It might be good to be straddled later, particularly with all that acne on your face.
I slid way the hell down in my chair and watched old Ackley making himself at home. Then I started horsing around a little bit. Sometimes I horse around quite a lot, just to keep from getting bored. What I did was I pulled the old peak of my hunting hat around to the front, then I pulled it way down over my eyes. That way I couldn't see a goddamn thing. I think I'm going blind, I said in a very hoarse voice.
It was a common warning to boys a few decades back to tell them that they would go blind if they masturbated, or they would start growing hair on their palms. Since JD has been setting us up with inner arousal, he needs to address the myth to lower the fear. No young prep school boy with nothing but pin-up girls on his chest or drawers, surrounded by naked men coming out of the shower, unable to concentrate on his studies because some guy is touching his personal junk in his personal space, can stress over whether or not he might go blind. I realize what you are thinking, but note the text.
I think I'm going blind, I said in a very hoarse voice. You're nuts, I swear to God, Ackley said. Give me your hand, I cried. Why won't you give me your hand? For Christ's sake, grow up, he said. I started groping around in front of me, like a blind guy, but without getting up or anything. I kept saying, Darling, why won't you give me your hand? I was only horsing around naturally.
See it? Now rising up in your mind? It's natural. Naturally.
I was only horsing around naturally.
Don't release yet, though. We have more programming to give you, so hold on. After you, hold on, has held on with either Acne's naked hand or your own, despite your nuts, madness, and you've had it put in your back, the wrong place, and you've gotten bad, what do? You are to remember the sodomy rage. This is part of the programming. And sure enough, he or you does.
That stuff gives me a bang sometimes. Besides, he always brought out the old sadist in me. I was pretty sadistic with him quite often. I pulled the peak around to the back again, relaxed. He started cleaning his goddamn fingernails with the end of a match.
Wait, why are his hands dirty? He just got out of the shower. Oh, that's right, he's been touching my personal junk in my back end. My conscious mind forgot. But let's see if I get mad about it.
He started cleaning his goddamn fingernails with the end of a match. He took another look at my hat while he was cleaning them. Up home we wear a hat like that to shoot deer in, for Christ's sake, he said. That's a deer shooting hat. Like hell it is. I took it off and looked at it. I sort of closed one eye, like I was taking aim at it. This is a people shooting hat. I said, I shoot people in this hat.
That is the basic program. Now that it has been learned and consented to, you are still reading the book at this point. The test is to see if you will automatically anticipate the trigger, expect it, and do as commanded. And so, we set up the stakes for you in step 7. Remember, but? Step 7. Building anticipation and expectation. We need not really say that the greatest means of keeping something in the forefront of any human attention is the powerful sense of anticipation or expectation. We all know that this is true. The excitement of the run-up to Christmas morning, the terror of a vampire movie, the wondering when our intended will finally pop the question, the ascent up a roller coaster, are all relatable realities. All humankind knows that anticipation and expectation are powerful forces. When used on purpose, the goal is simple. It is Pavlov and Rovorovich.
I am a good boy.
Once you have conditioned your dog, you can trigger him, and then you have his complete attention.
Bark.
When you have done it right,
Woof. That's awful. Do it properly.
Woof, woof.
Louder.
Woof, woof.
That's good.
you also have his mind space as well.
Do it again. Fetch.
It should be no surprise to say that the deeper a victim's attention, the more likely the master will gain the expectation assigned to the anticipation. So far, we have been conditioned to accept Hold-On's voice as our own, and we have been taken through setups, preconditioning, of inner angst, sexuality in pagan form, and murder. Any guilt, fear, or shame that we have felt in our preconditioning is projected at phonies and liars in society. Did you catch it? Hold on, Holden. This has been connected to sexual aggression, with the only release being murder in the guise of orgasmic release. Every hunter has his gun, and every sexual predator has his wizard's wand. Next, we will be tested with scenes where male roommates lie on our beds, wear our clothes, and talk about girls they have done, all while interjecting words like, "Boy, was she great."
She's a boy!
Whatever! That doesn't prove anything! Princesses can be hairy!
Yeah!
And calling these by their genderless last names, such as, "Boy, the last time I did Ferguson." This is the Baphomet.
Princesses can be hairy!
Swell, boy, just swell. We are commanded. Hold on, in first person, as us, focusing on our penises in anticipation while male footsteps come down the hall, while offering liquor and ogling older married women, while playing the voyeur as men dressed in drag, and while naked couples squirt liquid on each other. All of this along with the occasional inserted forward play, we say.
I mean, that's my big trouble. In my mind, I'm probably the biggest sex maniac you ever saw. Sometimes I can think of very crummy stuff I wouldn't mind doing if the opportunity came up. I can even see how it might be quite a lot of fun.
We really shouldn't be doing this.
Oh boy! See, all you gotta do is rub that lamp, and I'll say, Mr. Aladdin, sir, what will your pleasure be?
Shh! He'll hear you. You better come clean.
And this one.
I knew this one girl a couple years ago that was even crummier than I was. Boy, we had a lot of fun. Sex is something I really don't understand too hot. You never know where the hell you are. I keep making up these sex rules for myself, and then I break them right away. Last year, I made a rule that I was going to quit horsing around with girls. That deep down gave me a pain in the ass. Boy.
There's heavy ammunition in your camp. All I see is red now. Since we've been over, it won't stop. All I see is there's heavy ammunition in your camp.
This pattern continues again and again in the book, setting the programming into the subconscious of millions of American teenagers. Hear it here. I knew this one. Boy, we had a lot of fun. I knew this one. Boy, we had a lot of fun. You never know where the hell you are. In the back or front. I keep making up these sex rules for myself, and then I break them right away. Last year I made a rule that I was going to quit horsing around with girls. That deep down gave me a pain in the ass. Oh boy.
Oh boy!
No, this one.
I sat down in a chair and smoked a couple of cigarettes. I was feeling pretty horny, I have to admit it. Then, all of a sudden, I got this idea. I took out my wallet and started looking for this address. A guy I met at a party last summer that went to Princeton gave me. Finally, I found it. It was all a funny color from my wallet, but you could still read it. It was the address of this girl that wasn't exactly a whore or anything, but that didn't mind doing it once in a while.
We call her up and get rebuffed. Boy, was that rough. The next person we are told about in first-person narration is our 10-year-old sister, old Phoebe. Is she old enough? This is a setup that is basically passed over with the hope that on our next turn of the carousel, we will be quicker to accept Phoebe's openness after having blown it or fouled it up with the adults, with a quick shock to sink it in, we are told.
While I was changing my shirt, I damn near gave my kid sister Phoebe a buzz. I couldn't take a chance on giving her a buzz because she was only a little kid. But that wouldn't have worked either. They'd know it was me. My mother always knows it's me. She's psychic. But I certainly wouldn't have minded shooting the crap with old Phoebe for a while. You should see her. You never saw a little kid so pretty in your whole life. But you ought to see old Phoebe. She has this sort of red hair. She sticks it behind her ears. She has nice, pretty little ears. In the wintertime, she's only 10. She's quite skinny. Nice skinny. Roller skate skinny. You'd like her. The only trouble is, she's a little too affectionate sometimes. She's 10 now, and not such a tiny little kid anymore, but she still kills everybody. Everybody with any sense, anyway. So I just finished putting on my shirt.
Do you see it? Can you hear it? Are you waking up? Remember Jewish Mossad agent Jeffrey Epstein? Again and again, violence, shooting, death, and killing are worked in. Then they are connected together. Hold on. To the point that you expect it to be there, and sure enough, eventually, if you wait and anticipate it long enough, there it is. This was planned. But why? Hold on. At this point, we have only gotten through half of this book, but it is fair to say that after having screwed around with the boys, it's time to try our hands on the girls and see if we have learned anything from our programming session. The last step in any hypnosis spell is exactly the same. Step 8. Accepting any and all successes and using them for reinforcement the next time. And thus, the ritual begins again, building on what worked and the lessons learned from it. The self-absorbed great Masonic Illuminati teacher, Albert Pike, hold that name for Chapter 18 when we will meet him in the book, said that World War I was the setup for World War II, and that World War II would only be necessary if World War I failed to create the worldwide new normal that it was designed to create, a one-world pseudo-Zion government, based out of a unified Jerusalem. If World War II also failed to do it, World War III would most definitely be the final one needed. Having basically reached the midpoint of the book, we are going to revisit the morals again to better lock them in the victim, the reader's mind. This is you. All of this is done for the ultimate goal, Luciferian Armageddon programming, which we will explore soon. But we have stayed a long time in the darkness and need a break. So it's time to go back through the water curtain.
Go. Fetch him up. Drop. There we go. That's a good dog. That's a good boy.
we have explored how a young New York Jew, trained in passive mind control for the masses, used what he had learned in the CIC, which became the Army-controlled CIA. We see evidence of neuro-linguistic programming used in the first half of this book to great effect. And here we have our clue as to what Salinger was trying to either warn us about or trying to program us with. Don't forget the Judas Clause. And thus it is entirely possible that his goal was both.
Well, that's true, but it's not for you Goyim to know, but right now it's too late. It's over for you, white race. So that's why I'm speaking so honestly here, to bring it out into the open so that you can see it for what it is. You've been teaching the people real good, but they don't wake up, do they? You don't get a lot of followers, do they? Because you know why? They're scared of us Jews.
The Lord God Yahweh warned us to watch out for the synagogue of Satan. And as war is looking inevitable in the Middle East, we had better wake up, or we will find that we have Judases in our midst. More to come. Rationale for fair use of copyrighted items used. Fair use law allows fair use when copyrighted material is being used to make a specific educational, research-based, scholarly, and/or critical comment on the work being used. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Masters Mahan will be back.
And a shout-out thank you to YouTuber Urban8499 for getting the word out. Dude, we are proud of you. Keep it up. I have just one request. Is 3 times enough to listen? 4 may be your magic number. Thank you. Get the rest of them up. And more to come.